Assalamu alaikum everybody. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys the secret to sound design in Premiere Pro, and for that I'm going to use a video that I did for my client. I also posted it on Twitter and it did pretty good, so I thought I might as well make a breakdown or a tutorial on it. So that's what we are going to learn in today's video. So first off, this is not going to be the usual 30-minute long or 20-minute long tutorial. It's going to be a short one since it's not that hard to do sound designing. Also, a quick disclaimer, some of the things that I mentioned in this video I learned them from Mango. All of you probably know him. He recently published a sound designing pack and he also created a tutorial in that pack explaining how he does his stuff. So I got some of the ideas from there. So you can get his pack from the description. I'm going to link it down in the description below. And since the video or the tutorial he posted was in a Drive link and it was not accessible by everybody, so I decided and I asked him if I could create a tutorial on YouTube. So firstly, what we have to do is click on the audio track, hit right click, go to add tracks, and yeah, by default there are 3 tracks already there, so I add 7 more, so it creates a total of 10 audio tracks. Since I'm explaining this video, I had to delete all of my sound designing that was already done and I had to delete the audio tracks, so I'm gonna create 9 more, so we get a total of 10 audio tracks. Just like this, we have a total of 10 audio tracks. And now what we are gonna do, what I think is really important in sound designing, is to get your video a cinematic feel, you need reverb on some of your sound effects. And to do that, I'm gonna create it so that the first 3 to 4 tracks have reverb in them. So if I add any sound effect to either one of these 3 audio tracks, it's automatically gonna have reverb applied to it. So to do that, you have to make sure that you have audio track mixer enabled. And if you don't see that, let's say I delete this, I'm gonna go to window, I'm gonna click on audio track mixer on the sequence that I am in currently. It's called the SFX tutorial. So I'm gonna go ahead, go to the window, go to audio track mixer, and I'm gonna click enable on SFX tutorial, or not even click enable, I'm just gonna click on it once and it's gonna give me the audio track mixer. So to add a reverb to the first, not the first, to the 3 audio tracks that I want, what I have to do is go to A2, which is this one. You have to make sure that you don't change anything in the first audio track because that's where the audio from the original video is gonna be. So you make sure you don't mess with this one, otherwise it's gonna mess up the whole audio of your video. So we're gonna go to A2, go all the way up, click on the first drop down, go to reverb, click on studio reverb. Now double click on the studio reverb right here, and I'm gonna tell you guys the values that I use and I think that are perfect and completely balanced for content editing is 5,000 milliseconds of decay, so somewhere around here, that's the perfect value, and 50% vet, so it can be 49.5 or 50. I think these are the values that I personally think that are the best for content editing. You can play around with those and you can even go into the drop down and select the already made preset, but I personally think these are the best, so I don't mess around with any other settings. I just change these 2 and I feel like it's good to go. So now I'm gonna copy the reverb that I created and I'm gonna paste it in the other 2 audio tracks. So right click, go to copy track effects, go to the other track, paste it, do the same with the third one as well. And I have OCD, so I'm gonna click on these 2 so I can see this option right here. I don't know if it does anything or not, but I just like to click it so that I can see this. Now I'm gonna go down. Now once you have that done, you're gonna have to come down all the way and reduce the audio for all of the tracks except the first one and the last one. That's the thing that I learned from Mango. He showed a perfect value for the general sound effects that you can find on the internet is minus 15 decibels, but there are some sound effects like the click effect or some other effects that are usually way too loud or way too low, so you have to change those manually. Make sure that you don't mess with this one, the one that says mix. What this one would do, if I apply the minus 15 audio decibels on the last track, it's gonna apply this effect on all of the other tracks as well. So you have to make sure that you don't change this at all and you don't change the first one at all, because that's where you have the audio of your actual footage. Once we are done with the audio track mixer, the next step is to import your audio or sound effects library to the Premiere Composer plugin. This is a completely free plugin from Mr. Horse. You can get it on Google for free. Once you have downloaded it, all you have to do is go to extensions, come down here, Premiere Composer, click on it, and then you'll get the window pop up. You can just simply add it wherever you want to add. Go to user library, add a folder and select your sound effects folder in here. You don't have to import your SFXs manually every time you open up a project or every time you're trying to do sound design. You will already have it imported into Premiere Composer. The benefit of doing this is you can shift the pitch of the sound effect by just one click. Not only that, you can also reverse the sound effect with just one click. So for example, if I search for a riser, I'm gonna reduce the volume real quick. I can change the pitch of the sound effect just by dragging down the slider or dragging up the slider. Similarly, I can just click on the reverse button and it's gonna reverse the sound effect for me. Now to start the video with a bang, I'm gonna search up for a boom SFX. So I'm gonna search up sonic boom. Like I had said before, some sound effects require you to change the volume because they're usually at a lower volume than normal. Just like this one, it's not audible right now because the audio track is set to minus 15 decibels. And to clear that out, I'm gonna go ahead and go to the audio gain option on my sound effect, and I'm gonna add 15 decibels of volume to the sound effect so it cancels out and it is audible. Now you can hear it's not too loud, it's not too low, it's at the perfect volume and perfectly audible. That's the first SFX. Now for the second one, we can see that the text is coming in. Put a sound effect for that. I'm gonna search for the click SFX. I have one in mind that I want to use, which is the button click. This one is from Mango's SFX pack. It's completely free. I'm gonna link it down in the description. You can get it from there. Now this one as well, it's not audible right now. It is audible, but not as much as I would want it to be. So I'm gonna increase the audio for this as well. I'm gonna increase it by, let's say 5. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now I'm gonna scrub frame by frame. I see the text pop up. I'm gonna put it here, make sure my snapping is enabled. Go to the second text. I'm gonna duplicate this. Let's say if I were to duplicate the sound effect again, I have to keep in mind that I only added reverb to the first 3 tracks. If you want, you can go ahead and apply the reverb to the 5th track as well. The third text is popping up at a time where there is no SFX in the first or the second track, so I can just simply put it here, go forward. 4th text pops up, I'm gonna duplicate it. 5th text pops up and I'm gonna duplicate it, as you can. And now I'm gonna play it back. I think it's way too loud when you hear it all together, so I'm gonna select all 5 of these, go to audio gain, and I am gonna put it at 2 decibels. I think that should be good. That's perfectly fine. Now, the guy in the video is asking a question, right? And this entire animation is the second part of the question. We still haven't received the answer yet. And to build suspense to it, I'm gonna add a riser right before the second part starts. I'm gonna need a really quick riser though, because there is a part where it's really catching up the pace and really starting to speed up. While I was editing this video, I knowingly did this effect of building up speed to create, and I also knew that right after this I'm gonna put a big break on the video. Then there's gonna be another riser that would lead up to the answer of the video. It's an entire concept. It's gonna take you some practice, but you will get to a point where when you are editing your videos, you will get an idea of what sound effects you will be using when you are doing the sound design, and you will able to tweak your animations or your effects accordingly to what you're gonna do in the future. Similarly, how video editors get an idea of what animations they're going to be doing just by looking at the raw footage, right? So here I'm going to add a small riser, and I know the perfect one for this. This one. How was Japan able to conquer South? See, here it leads up to a transition, and to lead up to that I added a small quick riser. And now for the transition, it is basically a flash effect. So you know what goes with a flash effect? A camera shutter goes with a flash effect. This is the perfect one, and since we also have reverb on this third audio track, it's gonna sound pretty beautiful. You can see how big of an impact adding reverb makes if I play it all together. How was Japan able to conquer Southeast? I think the audio is coming in a bit late, so to fix that I'm gonna shift it a bit forward, a bit backwards. But that's perfect. Now for the pictures changing, I'm gonna basically use another mouse click, but not this one. This is a bit thick and it kind of resonates the sound of a keyboard. That's why I added it when the text was popping up. But now for the images changing, I'm gonna use a really thin mouse click, so I have the perfect effect for it as well, because I've been doing this for a while and I know my sound effects. It's PC mouse click from Epidemic Music. So I'm gonna go back in my timeline, I'm gonna scrub back to where the image changes, and I'm gonna add it right there. Now if I play it all together again, how was Japan able to conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War? These are pretty low in volume, so I'm gonna go ahead and increase the audio by 5 decibels. Southeast Asia during the Second World War. Still pretty low. I'm gonna undo and I'm gonna turn them up by 10 decibels. Southeast Asia during the Second World War. That's perfect. So if I listen to it again,
How was Japan able to conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War?
To my ears, it sounds empty, and I think I can duplicate this one more time and put it here to accommodate with the video ending. If I play it back again,
To conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War.
yeah, that sounds perfect.
Japan able to conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War.
And as that's catching speed, it's building suspense and leading up to the answer of the question. So to build suspense, we're gonna need another riser, but now we have a lot of space to work with, so we can use a really big riser, but not that big because we already had a riser before that. So we need to find the middle and sweet point. To do that, I'm gonna go back to my Premiere Composer and I'm gonna search up approach. Yeah, this one is perfect. So I'm gonna add this riser. As you can see, it's pretty big. You don't have to use the entire effect, and you can always trim it up to match the size of your timeline. And I'm gonna bring the first keyframe down all the way down to -35, or let's say -25 decibels. So if I play it
How
back,
was Japan able to conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War?
as you can see, it's pretty loud now. It's pretty loud when the impact hits. So I'm gonna bring that keyframe down to -5 decibels as well.
Conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War.
And that's perfect. But I think the riser could kick in a bit earlier. So I'm gonna make the audio in the beginning a bit louder.
To conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War.
That's perfect. I also think that because we have a flash right here, we can add a camera flash here as well with the click effect.
World War. Second World War.
It sounds perfect. Now leading up to the answer of the question, we are gonna add another riser, a quick and small riser. So for that, I'm gonna search up for swooshy. Yeah, this one is perfect.
This video.
Now also this starts with a camera flash, so I'm gonna add this effect again.
This video I'll be going.
If you take a listen to it
How
again,
was Japan able to conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War? This video I'll be going over exactly.
now here it is a really boring part, you can say, or a really static part. There is not much going on in the screen, but we cannot just leave it empty. We have to do something at least. So for that, since it's a part where the video is fast forwarding supposedly, I'm gonna add a TV static. Let me search up for TV. Okay, there's nothing for that. Fast forward. Okay, so we have sound effects for fast forwarding. This sounds the best. I'm gonna add it in. I'm gonna expand the timeline, go to where it ends, cut it, delete the rest, and increase the volume.
This video I'll be going over.
Yeah, that's at a point where it's audible and not annoying. Since I don't do music, I have to keep that in mind as well, because if I listen to the video without the sound effects, or if I listen to the video without the music, the volume of the sound effects might sound perfectly fine to me, but when you consider the video playing with music on top, it can suppress the audio of the sound effects. So in the original video, what I had done was, it was sounding perfectly fine on 10 decibels, but I knew that the client would add music, so I shifted it up to 15 decibels.
This video I'll be going.
So it's a bit loud when you hear it without the music, but when there is music in the video and when there is any other layer of audio on top of this, it's gonna suppress it anyway, so it's gonna sound perfectly fine.
I'll be going over exactly.
Now here is a transition, and for that I have a set of sound effects that I usually use. For this film burn, I use a slider sound, which is a slide 8. This one, I don't know why I use it, but I think it goes perfectly with it, and I like it.
First of all,
also for this bit, it's just text popping up. I'm gonna go ahead in the beginning of the video where I added a SFX for the text.
First of all,
now you can see that there is a lot of reverb in these click SFXs right now, and since there is no sound effect playing on top of it, it sounds bad. And because of that, we're gonna take these sound effects and we are gonna bring them down to a track where there is no reverb. So we can bring them down to, let's say, yeah.
First of all, why did?
Now it sounds perfectly fine.
First of all, why did Japan want to invade the Southeast Asian states? Well,
now that the clicks are done, there is a paper kind of grunge, or whatever you want to call it. There is a transition here. I think it's a paper transition, or looks like a paper transition, and especially because there is a paper effect coming right after it, I'm gonna add something called crumple, dry short paper. These are paper SFXs. I'm gonna add this one here. I'm gonna slightly adjust it.
Well, to put it simply,
That sounds perfect. And for these objects popping up, I'm gonna use.
they were facing shortages of oil.
Now there is a red arrow that indicates a failure or some sorts of error. So for that, I'm gonna basically search up failure. Nothing pops up. I'm gonna search up error. Oops. And then this sound effect pops up. So I'm gonna add it. Just go to audio gain and minus 15 decibels.
Shortages of oil.
Perfectly fine. I'm gonna bring it to the start of the effect.
Shortages of oil and other natural resources needed to attack China.
Now here, so there is a meme, and right after the meme there is an animation. And to lead up to that animation, I'm gonna add another riser. I'm gonna add another riser here. So basically in the intro, when you're leading up to any animation or when you're leading up to the next scene, always add a riser that fits the scene or that fits the environment of the, or that fits the nature of the animation. Because in the beginning,
how was Japan able to conquer?
When there was a question being asked, I used this one, when I also could have used this one. These are pretty much the same when it comes to the length of the riser. So for example, if I use this one instead of the one that I used,
Japan able to conquer South.
It makes no sense. When you listen to it, it sounds like there is gonna be something good happening in the video. I don't know how to explain it. It's a pretty weird concept, but I willingly chose this one over this one because right now I don't have the answer to the question and I am supposed to be in some sort of suspense, right? So I use this one, which sounds kind of sad.
How was Japan able to conquer?
And now where there is an answer coming up or there is a result or a
Second World War.
And now after the suspense breaks and I finally get the answer, I'm gonna add a riser which sounds, I don't know if I should say happy, but it just fits the mood of the animation that is coming up, or it just fits the mood of the scenario that is coming up, right? We waited. I don't know how to explain it. If you understand, you understand. I can't break it down more than that. Another example of when I'm making animations, I always keep my sound design in mind, is I added a shake when the meme pops up because I wanted and I knew that I would add a hit or a bass sound effect when the meme pops up, so I knowingly added a shake effect to it. So now I'm gonna add a bass sound effect. This sound effect is perfect for this situation.
China, but they also is needed to attack China.
Here I did a zoom out transition, and for that I'm gonna add a whoosh or swoosh. One more important thing, I'm gonna mute every other track to explain this part. Whenever you are adding a whoosh or a swoosh sound effect, basically any airy sound effect, for let's say if there was a pan crop in the video and I was zooming in instead of zooming out, or for the sake of this, we're gonna stick to the zoom out. The fastest point of the zoom out is supposed to match with the fastest point of the sound effects. So right now I'm gonna mark this bit because I know for a fact that this is where the transition is at its maximum speed. So I don't know why the mark is not working. I'm gonna mark it on the timeline and I'm gonna double click on the sound effect. I'm gonna zoom it in and I can see that there is a peak point on the sound effect clearly, right? Which is right here. So I'm gonna mark this here and I'm gonna match the marker on the sound effect and on the timeline. It sounds perfect, but if you think it doesn't sound perfect, it's because the nature of the sound does not match with the nature of the, or let's say the speed of the overall sound effect does not match with the speed of the transition. This sound effect is way too slow and this transition is way too fast. So it doesn't matter if you match the speed or match the volume to the maximum speed. If the nature of the sound effect is slower than the speed, or let's say the overall speed of the sound effect is slower than the transition, it's not gonna go well, even if you try to do all the shenanigans I just did. So for that, I'm gonna look for a better swoosh. I imported a really fast whoosh now. I'm gonna zoom it in. I think this is the fastest point and not this one. So I'm gonna delete this keyframe and I'm gonna match the keyframes. I think now this goes perfectly well together because the nature of the overall sound effect is pretty fast and it matches the speed of the transition. I'm gonna bring the volume down just a little bit and that's perfect for this situation.
They also needed to attack China, but they also
now there's more whooshes.
displace the Europeans.
As you can see, this zoom up or this zoom in is pretty slow, and the whoosh that we added earlier, now is the perfect time to use it because that was slow as well, right? So now I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna import this. This is the fastest bit of the animation. If you can't tell it, I added a posterized time on this animation, and that was 16 frames per second. So the moment where my animation starts skipping big frames like this, that's when I know that it is at its fastest point, because the frames cannot catch up with the speed and it starts to skip more and more frames. So here there was a subtle movement every other frame. Now here it is skipping big chunks of motion, so that's when I know that it is at its fastest point. Now I'm gonna match it with the fastest point of my sound effect.
Displace the European.
And if I bring the volume up,
Displace the European.
perfectly sits here.
Displace the Europeans. Displace the Europeans in the.
If you think the sound effect starts a bit too early or it's loud in the beginning, you can add a dissolve in the beginning.
The Europeans in the US.
Fits well perfectly.
Europeans in the US.
Now there is another slow motion right here. And to keep the consistency of the tone of the sound effect that I just used, I'm not gonna go look for a different one. I'm gonna duplicate the sound effect. I'm gonna right click, speed and duration. I'm gonna reverse speed. So just so that it sounds a tad bit different, but I'm not going to use a completely different sound effect, which is this. That's the fastest point in the animation because it started skipping mad frames, and I'm going to match the keyframes or match the markers.
Europeans in the US.
Bring the volume up.
Europeans in the US. Displace
Oops, not that much.
the Europeans in the US. Displace the Europeans in the US.
Perfectly sits here.
Europeans in the US is the dominant power in the region and build the region.
Now there is a transition coming up, but with a match cut. I don't want to say a match cut, but let's say a pan cut. I just created a new term, and for that I have a perfect sound effect that is really sharp. This one, it's a really sharp sound effect, and I think it does pretty good with transitions, with similar transitions. Place a marker and then match it up. I think since it's a really sharp sound effect, I'm gonna lower the volume just a bit.
And build an autarkic empire.
Perfectly matches with the transition. Now let's play it all together and give it a listen.
How was Japan able to conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War? This video, I'll be going over exactly how they did it in such a short time period, week by week. First of all, why did Japan want to invade the Southeast Asian states? Well, to put it simply, they were facing shortages of oil and other natural resources needed to attack China. But they also wanted to displace the Europeans and the US as the dominant power in the region and build an autarkic empire.
Now here the only thing left is a transition sound effect and some clicks for the text popping up, and this is the same transition that we used earlier, so we're going to use the same sound effect that we used earlier. There is no problem or there is no shame with using the same sound effect. And also for the click SFXs, we're going to use the same sound effects to keep consistency throughout the video. Or I would have changed the pitch of the sound effects if there was, let's say, a list of things going on, like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So I would use a sound effect for number 1, and I would use the same sound effect for number 2, but I would change the pitch there. But now for here, since there is a big break between the animations, I don't really have to change the pitch because the viewers would not notice that. I think it could use some dynamic audio, and by that I mean some easing in and some easing out. And to do that, since these are small sound effects with big gaps in the middle, what I can do is select them all together, nest them, put a easing in the beginning. By easing I mean a transition, so that it starts slowly and then catches up the volume. I'm gonna remove that from the end, and I'm gonna expand the first one.
So consequently, Southeast Asia was invaded.
That sounds perfectly fine. Only thing I would like to change right now is the riser before the meme, because I think it's a bit short and it doesn't match the vibe or the feel of this animation. So I'm gonna look for a different approach, riser or a different riser. I think this one would work.
Shortages of oil and other natural resources needed to attack China. But they also...
Oh, I forgot one thing. Oh, my bad. This is a meme, bro. And it really could use a Vine boom right now. I knew there was something off with this. It was in the back of my mind, but now I know what's missing. It's a Vine boom.
China.
Yeah, that's perfect. Now let's listen to it all together.
Able to conquer Southeast Asia during the Second World War. This video, I'll be going over exactly how they did it in such a short time period, week by week. First of all, why did Japan want to invade the Southeast Asian states? Well, to put it simply, they were facing shortages of oil and other natural resources needed to attack China. But They also wanted to displace the Europeans and the US as the dominant power in the region and build an autarkic empire, so consequently Southeast Asia was invaded.
We could also do what we did here with these as well, but I'm not gonna do it. You get the point. So that's pretty much it. That's my process of doing sound designing, and yeah, that's pretty much it for this tutorial. If you got to learn anything and if you enjoyed it, I really appreciate if you guys could hit that subscribe button and just like the video. Also drop down any recommendations or any questions you have in the comment section, and I will make sure to reply to every single one of you. Until then, Allah Hafiz.